Hi, I'm Mr. Rolando Jr. Z. Peralta, and I will be presenting to you the typical communication flows, one of the requirements for EDM 309, Management of School Systems under Dr. Mayfloor G. Posadas. So once again, my presentation is about the typical communication flows. Let's start. So after this presentation, you will be able to differentiate between downward, upward, horizontal, diagonal, and external communication flows. At the same time, we will also answer the following questions. That is number one, how does communication move within an organization? Next is there a pattern to the kinds of communication that come from senior management, from middle management, and from workers? What do typical information flows tells us about the kind of information that is communicated within the organization? And the fourth one is what does it tell us about who controls the flow of information? So always remember that the size, the nature, and the structure of the organization dictate which direction most of the information flows. I'm going to show you an organizational chart of the Department of Education wherein the OSEC, or the Office of the Secretary, is the highest office of the department. It goes down to the Teacher Education Council Secretariat and the internal audit, and so on until it reaches the schools and learning centers, as you can see in the diagram. This organization flow is formal since it is with fixed set of rules of intra procedures and structures. The size, the nature, and its structure affects the way how employees in offices under the department communicates. Allow me to also give you a review on how books define communication. Well, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, and behavior. So whether the organization is formal or informal, they observe common system of symbols. Thus, the birth of the communication flows. Here are the types of communication flows. First, we have the downward, the upward, and then next is the horizontal, diagonal, and then the external. So these are the types of communication flow. First is the downward communication flows, wherein the downward communication flow is when company leaders and managers share information with lower level employees. Unless requested as part of the message, the senders don't usually expect or particularly want to get a response, as you can see in the diagram here. The downward communication delivers information that helps to update the workforce about key organizational changes, new goals, or strategies. It also provides performance feedback at the organizational level and then coordinate initiatives and then present an official policy or public relations or improve worker morale or consumer relations. So one of the purpose of this communication flow is to provide feedback on employees' performance. Feedback is about listening actively, taking the time to analyze and then think of the best possible solution to perform better. It provides positive criticism and allows to see what everyone can change to improve their focus and results. Next one is giving job instructions. Providing a complete understanding of the employee's job as well as to communicate them how their job is related to other jobs in the organization. Communicating the organization's mission and vision in the employees, highlighting the areas of attention. Uh, it is incredibly important navigational tool when you are thinking about the future of the organization. By identifying the purpose of your work, or you can better understand the goals your organization should be committed to accomplishing. So, in order to have effective and error free downward communication, managers must specify communication objective. Like what I said earlier, it is important to highlight the objectives of the organization. Also, is to ensure that the message is accurate, specific, and unambiguous. When we say unambiguous, it means that it is not open to more than one interpretation. So, a clear and concise message will help you to ensure that the workers will remember the idea, solution, information, etc. And then the next one is to utilize the best communication technique. The next one is the upward communication flows, wherein the information moving from the lower level employees to high level employees is upward communication, as you can see in the diagram here. From the workers to the middle employees and so on. Or, yes. So, from the lower ones or from the lower level employees, it goes up. So, that is upward communication flow. So here are the examples. So you can have grievance system, complaint and suggestion box, also job satisfaction surveys, performance reports made by low-level management for reviewing by higher-level management, employee attitude surveys, letters from employees, and employee manager discussion. So specific example of this is the IPCRF, or the Individual Performance Commitment and Review Form for teachers. So the Individual Performance Commitment and Review Form, or the IPCRF, is an assessment tool for government employees to rate the task a teacher accomplished for a year. As you know, uh, a teacher focused mainly on basic education service as his or her major final output. We support this IPCRF form with outputs such as lesson plans, school records, portfolios, and etc. Well, let me pin this information for a couple of minutes and I will discuss this specific example later. As a matter of fact, I will not be discussing the contents of the IPCRF. An important goal of many managers today is to encourage or voluntary to encourage spontaneous or voluntary upward communication from employees without the need to ask first. Communicative behaviors that occur in the absence of prompts, instruction, or other verbal cues. The second time the same problem occurred, the worker can address it by themselves without calling the attention of other employees. It makes them independent, effective, and efficient, right? So let's go back to the IPCRF. So let's look at the simplified flowchart of IPCRF data accomplishment. So as you can see in the diagram, let's focus on the ratee since the job of the rater is an SOP already. So the ratee accomplishes the forms which includes rating themselves. The ratee is the teacher. So the ratee accomplishes the forms which includes rating themselves and finding the MOVs or the modes of verification for these outputs. It also allows the employees to create feedback based on their performance, which is in the part 4 of the IPCRF, and then sends it back to the rater, which is the next higher employee. This process is an upward communication wherein the worker communicates with higher employees. Typically, the rater is the master teacher or the principal or the school head. So that is a communication from a teacher, which is a lower level employee, to a higher level employee, which is the master teacher or the principal or school head. So that's it. Now let's move on to the horizontal communication flows. So the horizontal communication involves the exchange of information across department at the same level of the organization. For example, peer-to-peer communication. The purpose of most horizontal communication is to request support or coordinate activities. People at the same level of the organization can work together to work on problems or issues in an informal or as needed basis. For example, the yes, let's go back later. So, um, for example, the manager of the production department can work with the purchasing manager to accelerate or delay the shipment of materials. So that is a communication between two levels or two employees of the same level, which is the manager for the production department and the manager for purchasing. Next one is the finance manager and inventory manager can be looped in so that the organization can achieve the maximum benefit the maximum benefit from the coordination. So here is the diagram actually. So this is an example of horizontal communication flow, wherein the purchase manager can communicate with the production manager and then goes to the quality control manager and then to the sales manager. Or the sales manager can communicate with the quality control manager, or the quality control manager can communicate with the production manager. And then the manager can communicate with the purchase manager, or the purchase manager can communicate with sales manager. Or, I mean, yes, like that. Or the production manager can communicate with quality control and so on, as long as they are of the same level, which is managerial level. So the purpose of the most horizontal communication for this, oh, by the way, there's another example, which is like this one, communications between two employees who report to the same manager is also an example of horizontal communication. So there's of the same level and they work on the same manager and they communicate with each other. So that is another example. So the purpose of the most horizontal communication is to request support or coordinate activities. Effective use of horizontal communication in the workplace can enhance productivity by making information sharing, problem solving, collaboration, and conflict resolution more efficient. Some problems with horizontal organization. However, some problems with horizontal communication can arise if one manager is unwilling or unmotivated to share information, or sees effort to work uh, commonly as threatening his position. That is a territorial behavior. In a case like that, the manager is at the next level up. The manager at the next level up will need to communicate downward to reinforce the company's value of cooperation. So as you can see, there is a mix of communication flow, right? I was talking about horizontal communication flow. However, in this case, if there is a territorial behavior between two employees, you can apply the downward communication. So specific example of this communication is the DEPED Order number 54 series of 2016, which which discusses the transfer of learners. The diagram shows the communication flow between the receiving school and the originating school. So actually, this is applicable to kindergarten up to grade 12 under the Department of Education, and as well as in the private sectors. So as you can see, the receiving school starts with to enroll the learner and then encodes it into the LIS, or the Learner Information System, and then the system will identify whether the learner is a transferee. If yes, and then the request for the records of transfer, and then the originating school will send the form needed, and then after that, the receiving school will confirm the receipt of the document transfer, and then so on. And the more processes, if the learner is not a transferee, then the system will also make a new option for that. Well, my focus here is that there are two schools, which is the receiving school and then the originating school. So as you can see in the diagram, they are in the same level. The schools are in the same level. Whether it is a small school or a big school, they are of the same level. And as you can see, there is a communication between the two organizations or the two schools. So this is an example of a horizontal communication flow. So next one is the diagonal communication flow. The diagonal communication is cross-functional communication between employees at different levels of the organization. It takes place when people working at the same level interact with those working at a higher or lower level of organizational hierarchy and across the boundaries of the reporting relationships. If the sales representative, for example, if the sales representative emails the vice president of marketing is a diagonal communication flow already. Whenever communication goes from one department to another department, the sender's manager should be made part of the loop. A manager, however, may be put in an embarrassing position and appear incompetent if he isn't aware of everything happening to in his or her department. Trust may be lost and careers damaged by not paying attention to key communication protocols, right? So there is a representative and then directly to sending an email to the vice president without informing the manager. So as I said, it will affect the environment. It will affect the relationship between the sales representative and the manager because he failed to inform the manager that he will be sending an email to the vice president. So remember that the diagonal communication is becoming more common in organization which is flattened, matrix or product-based structure. So this is a diagram for the communication or diagram for the diagonal communication flow. As you can see, the workers and then straight to the manager. So I'm going to show you, as I said, I mentioned earlier, there was a flat organization, right? Remember that the diagonal communication flow is more effective when you use it in a flat organization. And then what is a flat organization? Here's a diagram of a flat organization. A flat organization is also known as horizontal organization, has an organizational structure with few or no levels. Remember, few or no levels of middle management between staff and executive. There is no middle management in the hierarchy of the organization. So as you can see here in the diagram, this is an example of a flat organization or what we call a horizontal organization, which um, which is more suitable for diagonal communication flow. As you can see, the purple one is the chief executive. It has a direct contact with the developer. Also, the chief executive has a direct contact with the office and development manager, and so on. So this is an example of a flat organization. It does not go with a middle employee. It has a direct communication with one employee to another to another employee or from a lower level employee to the highest level employee. So what is the advantages? So what are the advantages of the building relation advantages of the diagonal communication flows? So first one is it builds relationships between senior level and lower level employees from different parts of the organization. Next one is encouraging an informal flow of information in the organization. Next one, it reduces the chance of messages being being distorted by going through additional filters, right? So it's a direct communication. So there is no distortion of the message. It also reduces the workloads of senior level managers. So yes, so this is a diagram actually of the three communication flows that I've mentioned earlier. I mean, I'm going to show you the fourth one, but let's focus first on the downward communication, which is represented by purple arrows. So as you can see, the owner president communicates with the marketing manager that is in a green one, and then remember the purple arrows. So the marketing manager can also communicate directly with the supervising or advertising supervisor. So that is an example of a downward communication. Let's focus on the upward communication, which is presented by the yellow arrows. So let's focus on the sales staff. So as you can see, the sales staff communicates with the sales supervisor. So that is an example of a upward communication flow. Or the note taker supervisor, as you can see in the diagram, um, communicates with the operations manager. So that is an example of a upward communication flow. Next one is the horizontal communication, being represented by the red arrows. Let's focus on the sales staff. The sales staff communicates with the copiers, or the note taker supervisor communicates with copier supervisor. So they are of the same level. That is being a supervisor. So that is an example of a horizontal communication. The next one here is the diagonal communication, wherein in the diagram the workers communicate with the manager. So they didn't communicate with their direct manager. However, they communicated with the manager from the other department. So remember the things like affecting the relationship or losing the trust in the work environment because of this kind of diagonal communication. So remember that diagonal communication is only applicable to flat organization, as I discussed earlier. So the last one is the external communication flows, which focuses on, according to the resources, communications do not start and stop within the organization, right? So it's an external communication focuses on audiences outside the organization. It is important for employees to behave professionally, right, and do not make commitments outside of their scope of authority. So the main goal of the external communication is to inform the world, right, the outside world, an important message about the work and quality of the organization. Informal external communication is a form of communication which organizations can't regulate directly because it's a communication from to the outside of the organization. Directly, that is why it is important for employees to behave professionally and not to make commitments outside of their scope of authorities. So the first level and middle level management generally handle operational business communication such as purchasing, hiring, and marketing. Right? Purchasing, hiring, and marketing are ways for external communications. Sorry. So here are other ways for external communication. So you can send letters, faxes, direct mails, advertisements, video, websites, pamphlets, brochures, and more. So here are the ways for external communication. I'm going to show you um, a statement from the CSC rules implementing the code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees, which is rule number 3 of section 5. According to this, every department, office, and agency shall consult the public they serve for the purpose of gathering feedback and suggestions on the efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of services. This shall establish mechanisms to ensure the conduct of public consultations and hearings. So, why is it important to have an external communication flow? Because, or I mean, to have an external communication because it presents a favorable image of an organization. It provides information about products and services to consumers. It advertises the organization and reduces the risk of mistakes. So that's it. So that was external communication. So once again, let's review the types of communication flow. Number one, we discussed about the downward communication. And then we had the upward communication flow, and then the horizontal organizational flow, and then the diagonal, the horizontal communication flow, rather, the diagonal and the external communication flow. Well, these are the resources of my presentation. And always remember before I end, uh, let me share a quotation from Peter Drucker that according to him, the most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. And according to Nat Turner, the good communication is a bridge between confusion and clarity. Well, that's the end of my presentation. I hope that we were able to answer the learning outcomes and the questions that we've posted earlier. So once again, this is Mr. Rolando Jr. Z. Peralta, and my presentation was about typical communication flows. Stay safe and have a blessed day. Bye.